Hello, everybody. Welcome to ManageEngine's Patch Tuesday Updates. So, before I begin with our session for today, where we're going to see about the April's Patch Tuesday updates, the April 2018 Patch Tuesday updates, I have a very small favor to ask from you guys. It's more like a sound check. So, if my voice is clear, if my voice is audible, and if you're able to view the presentation, then please do send in a confirmation via chat. So once I get a few confirmations from you guys, I will be good to begin with our session for today, where we're going to see about April 2018's Patch Tuesday updates. What's hot, what have you got, and all the update details. So I'll wait for a few minutes. Okay, so we're good to go, guys. We have had a few confirmations from those who are listening to the session. So I will now start with our session for today. 2017 was a big year for cybersecurity, and 2018 is projected to be even bigger. Known vulnerabilities, if you'd see, the ones that exist, the known vulnerabilities are set to account for 99% of all exploits, whether through malware, ransomware, or phishing. So now we are here for Patch Tuesday updates from ManageEngine for the month of April 2018. So how did this Patch Tuesday go? With everyone being preoccupied with Mark Zuckerberg appearing before the US Congress, any news on Patch Tuesday updates would be lost in the headlines. But is that so? Surely not. This month, April 2018, did have a shower of critical updates for critical vulnerabilities to be patched immediately. So let's see what all is there in the limelight. So this, for those of you who are new to the Patch Tuesday series, this will be a 45-minute session, and this would be the agenda for a session. First, we will see on a quick breakdown on the Microsoft's Patch Tuesday updates, and then we will see all the updates that we have for our third-party applications, because we should never miss out on our third-party applications. 78% of vulnerabilities in 2017 was accounted on third-party applications. And thirdly, we will analyze the impacts or effects of what will happen if we are not going to deploy the patches for these vulnerabilities that we're going to see. So we will see the impacts or effects that could be caused on your network, on your environment, if you're missing out on these patches without having them deployed. Lastly, and last but not the least, we will see how we can defend or secure our network. So we now know that 2018 is going to be a bad year. It's going to be an expensive year for IT department. But how are we going to defend or protect ourselves? So we will see about that as well. And for the benefit of everybody, all the questions that are raised during this session will be discussed during the webinar. And if you have any questions regarding the updates that have been released for April 2018, or any questions on ManageEngine's patch management, you can raise them via chat. So you have a chat window where you can raise your questions. I have an expert panel right here with me who will help in answering those questions real time. So I think we're good to begin with our session for today. So I have a session where we're going to talk about what's in the limelight, what updates have stood out from the crowd. So first update is about you may be at risk while using the web. So this comes as a warning. Watch out, Windows users. Hackers might trick you into clicking on a malicious link or opening a malicious website, and then they are going to take complete access to your system. But with Microsoft's April 2018 Patch Tuesday updates, this can help you out too. The Windows graphic component is reported to have 5 critical vulnerabilities. So as you all know, the Windows graphics component is responsible for the graphics on your Windows screen. And this Windows graphics component has a font library which could be equipped with specially crafted embedded fonts. Now, due to some improper handling of Windows Fonts library, there has been there has been reported a remote code execution in which the attacker can gain full access to your system. So I repeat, if you are a Windows user, irrespective of whether you use Windows 10, 8.1, the RT 8.1, 7, or even the Windows Servers 2008, 12, and 16, you may still be at risk until you apply the latest patches from Microsoft's April patch release for the Windows graphic component. ManageEngine's patch management has supported these updates, which you can readily have it available from the critical vulnerabilities tab. So I will show you how the critical vulnerability report can be made use of in the future. But the first news that's in the limelight today is the 5 critical updates for 5 vulnerabilities that have been reported in the Windows graphic component. So if you're not going to fix it, then you might be tricked by the hackers into a malicious website. You can click on any link and you are going to be hacked. Your PC is going to be hacked. And the second important news is Microsoft ended support for Windows 10 version 1607. So Microsoft has formally ended support for Windows 10 version 1607, which is also known as the anniversary update for home and pro users. So PCs that remain on the anniversary update will no longer receive Microsoft's monthly updates going forward, potentially, which is going to leave them insecure. So if you're running the anniversary update, then you may want to upgrade your PC soon. So this is another news that I've got for you. And thirdly, we have a different scenario here. Protection needs protection. The Microsoft malware protection engine itself requires protection. So with the CVE 2018-0986, with this update, the very tool Microsoft uses to protect their users has turned against them because of the very vulnerability that has been reported in the malware protection engine. The Microsoft malware protection engine, as you know, it provides the scanning, detection, and cleaning capabilities for a variety of Microsoft antivirus and anti-spy software. Let's take, for example, the Windows Defender. So there was a vulnerability discovered in this Microsoft malware protection engine itself. And for more information, if you'd like to know, this was reported by Thomas Dullian, who's also famously known as Hardware Flake. He's a security researcher who's been working with Google Project Zero. So when this vulnerability was reported, there is an out-of-band security update that was immediately pushed in the April's Patch Tuesday release, which you can deploy and have your malware protection engine protected. So protection requires protection in the year of 2018 because that's where cybersecurity is related to be. And the fourth news is the AV compliance or the register key saga ends. Remember, with the introduction of the Meltdown and Spectre mitigation updates, the introduction of the Meltdown and Spectre updates caused a number of blue screens on systems running AV engines that were interacting with the kernel in unexpected ways. So if you remember to have deployed the Meltdown updates, there was the register key information that Microsoft had passed down. So Microsoft introduced this key to prevent the blue screen scenarios from occurring. But it also required customers to jump through hoops if their AV vendor did not apply the key. That restriction that Microsoft had on its Windows OS updates for Meltdown and Spectre has finally been removed. So there's no more registration key that is required for you to deploy the Meltdown and Spectre OS updates. You can now go on and deploy the updates if you've still not applied, and there will not be any blue screen issues associated with this. So that comes with April's Patch Tuesday. And last but not the least, and saddening, we have Samsung ransomware that just hit Atlanta. For over a week, the city of Atlanta had to battle a ransomware attack that had caused serious digital disruptions in 5 of the city's 13 local government departments. The attack, if you'd see, has had far reaching impacts, crippling the court system, keeping residents from
Power
paying their
on.
water bills,
Bluetooth
pushing the
mode.
Atlanta Police Department to
Ops
file
mode.
paper reports for days. So this has been devastating, and all this has been caused by a standard but notoriously effective strain of ransomware called Sansa. So this is all about the news in the limelight. So we have seen different news, and all through these news, there's one thing that's common, that vulnerabilities keep increasing. And through the session, guys, I think we might be facing an audio glitch. So I just want a confirmation again from you guys. If you'd like to help me out, you just have to send me a confirmation saying that the audio is fine. Because I seem to have a little disturbance in the audio. So if it's clear, then I think
You.
I'll just continue with the Patch Tuesday series. So I'll wait for your confirmation. So once I get it, I think I'll continue with the series. Just 2 seconds until we solve this out. So thank you guys. You've always been very kind to ManageEngine. So hi, I've received a few confirmations. So now we have seen the news in the limelight, and now I have a gentle reminder for you guys. So I think for the past three sessions on Patch Tuesday, we have been giving you a reminder that Windows 10, for a few versions, the life cycle is going to end. So we have an end of life warning for Windows 10 1607. The anniversary update that we were just talking about has ended finally on April 10, 2018. And Windows 10 1703 October 9, 2018 is the date that has been scheduled for Windows 10 1703 version update. So what we would recommend you to do is everyone has to update to the latest version of Windows 10, whichever is going to release. I have a surprise news again at the end of the session, which I would like to share with you. It is about Windows 10. So I hope the audio glitch is now fixed. So if you guys can listen to the audio, please let me know via chat. So once it's clear, I think, yeah, so we have received a few confirmations. Thank you guys for being so kind. We have been facing a little audio glitch with the session. I think we're good now. So this would be the gentle reminder that we would like to pass on. So we've been passing it on for the previous 3 months. You will have to take note of the end of life warning that has been provided for Windows 10 1607, the anniversary update, and Windows 10 1703 version, which is to be ended by October 9, 2018. So the known issues with the Patch Tuesday of April 2018 is found and reported in the updates KB4093118 and the 108 update. So these issues, if you see, Microsoft reported known issues in the monthly roll-up update, which is 118, and the monthly security-only update, which is 108 for Windows 7 and the Windows Server 2008 R2 version operating system. So it is found to be problematic only for your Windows 7 and Windows Server 2008 R2 system. So if you do not have those, then you don't have to worry about these updates. So these updates, if you're going to deploy, after you install this update, your SMB servers may leak memory. Your server message block servers may leak memory. And also, a stop error occurs on computers that don't support streaming single instructions, multiple data extensions too. So if you do not want to face these two problems, then we would recommend you to delay the deployment of these two updates until Microsoft comes with a resolution. So I think we're good to go see how many patches have been released by Desktop Central after the April's Patch Tuesday. 378 patches released in April 2018 by Desktop Central. And I have a count of how many vulnerabilities have been fixed, how many impacts have come out, and how many updates are available for 66 of the vulnerabilities. A different version, a different perspective to our data. So if you could see, I have patches by impact. So the one on the top is my remote code execution. Yes, again in April, we have a lot of vulnerabilities we have a lot of remote code execution vulnerabilities for which updates have been released. And then followed by a lot of information disclosure vulnerabilities for which security updates have been released. Information disclosure is something critical because sensitive information of your network or your personal information is going to be available in the hands of the hackers. So you need to make sure that you deploy the updates that are being available for information disclosure. Another graph that's going to make it easier for you, if you're going to classify the patches that have been released by their severity, then we have a lot of critical patches as well as important patches. So you need to deploy 57.6% of important updates followed by 22% of critical updates, and we also have moderate and low. So I have a chart of all the OSs or applications that have been affected. So this time in April, if you'd see, usually we have a lot of affected applications both in Microsoft Office as well as in Windows. But this time, if you see, Windows has tremendously increased with the count in the number of applications or OSs that have been affected. And then we have Microsoft Office with just a little count of 13, followed by Internet Explorer, Microsoft Edge. This time, we also have Microsoft Visual Studio, and interestingly, even the wireless keyboard. So these are the list of OSs or applications that have been affected for which updates have been released. First, let's look into Microsoft Office. So the severity of updates that have been released for Microsoft Office falls under important, and there are different impacts that can be caused when these vulnerabilities are exploited. Like I said, we have information disclosure, a remote code execution, and elevation of privilege. These are the different components that can be affected if the vulnerabilities are exploited. So to exploit the vulnerabilities, these are the components that will be handled by the attackers or the malicious actors. So I have a list of CVE IDs. And then coming to the interesting part, what happens if you're not going to deploy the security updates for Microsoft Office? Several software, such as the Excel, SharePoint, and MS Office, have had vulnerabilities with impacts like information disclosure, remote code execution, and elevation of privilege. MS Excel, if you see, it comes with a remote code execution vulnerability, which, when exploited, can allow hackers to run arbitrary code on systems. There's also another remote code execution vulnerability in your Windows graphic component, and this is because of improper handling of the special fonts that we were talking about. Like I said, your Windows graphic component has a font library which can be equipped with different special fonts of your choice. And in this, there has been a remote code execution vulnerability reported, and because of this, there are 5 critical vulnerabilities which, if not patched at the right time, you are going to fall in the hands of a hacker. You can be tricked into a malicious site or a malicious link on your web, and this can result in hacking your PC. So you need to make sure that you deploy the security update that has been released for the remote code execution vulnerability in Windows graphic component. So this update actually corrects the way the font library is handled. And then we have an elevation of privilege vulnerability in SharePoint, which redirects users to malicious content if exploited. So this is a public disclosure vulnerability. So Microsoft had publicly disclosed on the elevation of privilege vulnerability in SharePoint. And then there are several information disclosure vulnerabilities that have been identified in the Microsoft Office software, and if exploited, they're going to result in the disclosure of sensitive information to malicious sites. So at the end of the day, your system, the affected system's data or the user's data is going to be compromised. So this time in April, with respect to Microsoft Office, we have a lot of information disclosure and remote code execution vulnerabilities. Coming to Microsoft Windows, which has topped the list of applications and OSs that have been affected, we have severity levels as critical, important, and moderate. And just take the look at the impacts that have been created. We have all the impacts available from denial of service to elevation of privilege, information disclosure, remote code execution, and also we have security feature bypass. So let's take a look at the components. So I've got a huge list of components that will be affected if the hacker has planned to exploit these vulnerabilities. So these are the list of components. Coming down, I have a list of CVIDs which you can refer from here. So coming to the interesting part of exploit assessment, a total of 28 applications have been affected for which in this month of April, and they are being rated as critical, important, and moderate vulnerabilities for which updates have been released. So interesting, we have a buffer overflow vulnerability in the Microsoft Jet database engine, which is going to allow remote code execution on an affected system. So when I say remote code execution, it means that the end user who's being affected, the end user system that's being affected, the hacker can run arbitrary code on the end user system. And if it's going to be with administrative rights, then well and good. The attacker can take complete control of the system. So we are talking about a buffer flow vulnerability in Microsoft Database Engine. So I like to share the information on what a buffer flow vulnerability is, on what a buffer overflow vulnerability is about. It's an anomaly where a program, while writing data to a buffer, overruns the buffer's boundary and overrides the adjacent memory locations. So it's a common software coding mistake that an attacker could exploit to gain complete access to an end user system. And with respect to remote desktop protocol, the RDP service, there is again a denial of service vulnerability reported in RDP, which results in your RDP service to stop responding on the target system. So we have an update released for this RDP service vulnerability as well. And then we have an interesting one because there's a vulnerability which affects your HTTP 2. We have not yet seen many vulnerabilities in HTTP2 implementations, but as people start deploying it more, I expect to see more vulnerabilities in this as well. So HTTP.sys, the vulnerable component patched here, implements HTTP for Microsoft's web server, which is IIS. And there's another vulnerability in your Active Directory. First time in my experience so far, I've been doing the Patch Tuesday series. This is the first time I've come across a vulnerability in Active Directory. So it's a security feature bypass, and if it's going to be exploited, it is going to bypass the firewall policies that have been applied to modern applications. So remember, Windows this time comes with a lot of vulnerabilities. Around 28 applications were affected. So we have listed most of the exploitment assessments that could happen if these vulnerabilities are going to be exploited successfully by the hackers or attackers. So it is important that you deploy the updates that have been released for your Windows as well. And then coming to Microsoft Edge, we have severity levels as critical, important, moderate, and low. And then coming to impact, we have information disclosure and remote code execution. So these are the components which can be affected if a hacker plans to exploit the vulnerabilities, the list of CVIDs, and then about exploit assessment, remote code execution vulnerabilities in your Microsoft Edge browsers when exploited result in malicious actors taking control of the affected system. So once he's found a way to your network, he can install programs or he can run arbitrary code and whatnot. He has complete control over the system that has been affected if you're not going to deploy patches for your MS Edge. And then coming to Microsoft Internet Explorer, another native browser of Microsoft, a remote code execution and information disclosure vulnerability exists importantly in the scripting engine. So things have gone wrong with the process of handling objects in the memory with respect to the scripting engine as well as that of the Internet Explorer. So this has resulted in a lot of vulnerabilities, and this results in arbitrary code execution and also your system or user data to be compromised. This time we have Microsoft Visual Studio available. So with respect to the updates, they fall under the level severity of importance. And then coming to the impact, these have been classified as information disclosure vulnerability. So the component that can be affected is while compiling program database files, your Visual Studio discloses limited contents of memory. So the component is going to be the compilation process of your program database files, and this is the CVID for which the update has been released. So what happens if the contents from Visual Studio are being disclosed? So this information disclosure vulnerability comes with a security update which is going to address the vulnerability by correcting how the PDB files, how the program database files are generated when a project is compiled. So this is the update that has been associated with Visual Studio. And last but not the least, the most interesting update that I've come across is about the Microsoft wireless keyboard. Come on, even the keyboard is not an excuse today in the landscape of IT security, where we have so many cyber attacks, where we have so many endpoint attacks happening. Even the Microsoft wireless keyboard has come out with vulnerabilities for which updates have been released. And if you see, the severity of the update is critical, and the impact it causes is a security feature bypass. Your security is going to be bypassed if the update is not deployed. So the component that's going to be affected here is your AES encryption key, and this is the CVID. So let me tell you something about the wireless keyboard and how it has been affected. A security feature bypass vulnerability exists in a Microsoft Wireless Keyboard 850, which could allow an attacker to reuse an AES encryption key to send keystrokes to other keyboard devices, or he can read keystrokes sent by other keyboards for the affected devices. Interesting, isn't it not? An attacker could use the vulnerability to inject arbitrary keyboard HID packets into a keyboard's dongle. So let me put it into an example which you can understand. An attacker could simulate keystrokes to send malicious commands into a victim's computer. He could also read keystrokes such as passwords sent by other keyboards for the affected devices. So we have a security update in this Patch Tuesday, April 2018, and this security update will enhance the security by mandating unique AES encryption keys that are generated for each wireless keyboard device. So the one thing that we have to take away, one takeaway that we have from this wireless keyboard vulnerability is that even your devices have no excuse to the vulnerabilities or attacks that are happening in the year 2018. And then finally, I have Adobe Flash Player. So this time, Adobe has released a critical as well as an important update for its Flash Player, which is widely used, of course, you know. So we have a remote code execution vulnerability that has been reported, and the updates that have been released address the critical vulnerabilities in Adobe Flash Player version 29.0.0.113 and the earlier versions as well. So this is the CVID that is associated with it. And of course, the exploit assessment, if you take, if it's going to be a remote code execution, again, a hacker or an attacker who's able to access the system, he can take complete control of the systems that's going to come with an administrative right. And he could run arbitrary code, he could install malicious content or programs, and then boom, everything is gone. So this is the security update that comes with the Adobe Flash Player. So now I have a list of all the non-security Office updates that have been released with Microsoft's Patch Tuesday for April. And then this time, shockingly, we have a lesser list of third-party updates that have been released for Windows. Usually this list goes up to 2 slides, but this time it has shortened down to 1 slide. So I have a list of all the third-party updates for Windows. And then we have a list of Mac updates which have been released along with Patch Tuesday, which we have taken out and consolidated for you. So one gripping report from Gartner. We have now seen what are the updates that have been released for Microsoft's Patch Tuesday, April 2018. What are the severity levels that these updates come out with? What are the exploit assessments that could be made, the components that are affected, and the CVIDs which you can refer and take note of. So now I have come to one of the most important parts. I have a gripping report from Gartner that states that by 2020, known vulnerabilities will account for 99% of all exploits, whether through malware, ransomware, or phishing. You could see that with new threats uncovered every day. Like recently, we had Meltdown, Spectre, and much more. The best way to mitigate attacks on your network is to first fix your known vulnerabilities, which is what Gartner recommends. So, what Gartner says is new system administrators need to first fix vulnerabilities that exist in your network because those are the ones that are likely to be exploited very soon. So, how are we going to fix these vulnerabilities? I have two logos put in front of you. I'm sure you guys know what each of these logos refer to. The first, as you can see, is a melting shield. So this is a meltdown bug. And on the right hand side, I have a little ghost which represents the Spectre bug. So Meltdown and Spectre took the IT world by storm in the month of January. Even the year 2018 was not completely gone, but before that we had Meltdown and Spectre affecting almost all machines that have chips manufactured for the past 20 years. So all processors that run on chips that have been manufactured for the past 20 years have been affected by Meltdown and Spectre. Luckily, the good news is there are no public exploitations reported on Meltdown and Spectre. But remember, we never know which attacker in which part of the world is trying to exploit these bugs. So it is good to always patch the updates that have been released so far, just not for Meltdown on Spectre, but for any security updates that are being released. So I'm now going to show you an interesting report that has been released by Spiceworks. As you know, I assume a lot of you hearing to the session know what Spiceworks is. It is a trusted community for IT professionals. It is a networking community for IT professionals. So what Spiceworks did was just 2 weeks after the Meltdown Inspector attack had happened, Spiceworks had conducted a survey among 500 IT professionals, and this survey was just to find out how risky is Meltdown Inspector perceived to be. How risky are the system administrators considering Meltdown Inspector to be? Do they think that Meltdown Inspector can be exploited? And if yes, is the patching of these updates important? So to determine the level of risk that has been perceived among organizations for each device or service, there was a survey that was run by Spiceworks for 500 IT professionals. So the first report, if you see here, you can see that 81 percentage of system administrators perceive that Windows OSs are too risky if they're going to be exploited. So Windows OSs are risky if Meltdown Inspector vulnerabilities can be exploited, followed by web browsers, and then we have Android OS and other versions. And then the next report here, if you'd see, it gives us the percentage of system administrators or IT professionals that have started patching among organizations for their devices or services. Remember, just 2 weeks after the Meltdown Inspector attack, this survey was conducted, which means just after 2 weeks, we just had the workaround patches, which was released by Microsoft for the Windows OSs. We did not even have the main level patches, which could completely mitigate Meltdown Inspector. In such a scenario, 57 percentage of system administrators had already started patching the Windows OSs, followed by a 37 percentage who had already started patching the antivirus software. And then we have Linux distributions which were taken seriously and patched, followed by web browsers, Mac OS, and the rest. So this stresses the fact that patching is the effective step, is the effective security method that you could adapt to in order to fix vulnerabilities that are known. Because if you see, there are findings that say that 99 percentage of exploitations are going to come from known vulnerabilities. So what is that defense method that you could adapt in your network to fix the known vulnerabilities, which is nothing but patch management. And when I talk about patch management, even in this report, if you see, you need one solution which is going to help you patch your Windows OSs, which is going to help you patch your antivirus definition, which is going to help you patch your Linux distributions, your browsers, Mac OSs, and all of these. So one patching solution which can help you patch multiple OSs, be it Windows, Mac, or Linux, and different flavors of each of these OSs, which is going to help you patch different third-party applications. It could be Java, it could be your browsers, and this one single patching solution should help you in distributed patching, which means you should be able to deploy updates to systems in any part of the world, even your roaming users for that matter. And it should not just stop with patching. You should have reports available. You should have audits and compliance details available. You should be able to test your patches. So what is that one effective, unique solution, your one-stop solution for patch management that can be offered for system administrators in order to help them defend their network from the growing number of vulnerabilities? For this, we have patch management from ManageEngine, because we know that securing against vulnerabilities is complex in today's IT world. And when we talk about patch management, we need complete automation, complete process to automate patch management, right from scanning your patches to detecting the missing patches to download those patches and deploy them to your network and then report on them. Now, as I begin with explaining the product for you, we have been receiving certain requirements from end users who ask us to explain in depth about the product. So here we will give you an overall look on how the product works and what are the different features that you can make use of. But we also have an in-depth training which can be arranged if you would like to look into the technical capabilities of each of the features. So now I will take you for a quick walkthrough on how the product works and what are the different features that come in hand for you when you have to deploy patches to different updates to different applications. So we are looking at a set it and forget it kind of automation. So you just tell me what to patch and the rest of the process is automated for you. So we have automate patch deployment, which is the most important feature of all the patching products available from ManageEngine. I would call it a one solution for all your patching needs, because right from selecting the patches and then knowing what is missing in your environment, downloading the patches from the different vendor sites, and then deploying the patches at the time that you wanted to deploy, and lastly, reporting and seeing how secure your network is. For all of these requirements, we have automate patch deployment, the most important feature which can be beneficial for you. So I'm now going to take you to the product to show you how automate patch deployment works. It comes in four different stages. All you have to do is just give me details for each of these stages, and then we are good to create with an APD task. So the first stage would be to select applications, where you tell us what are the patches which you would like to deploy. So what patches would you like to deploy is the first stage where you give the information. The second stage is to choose the deployment policy. How do you want the deployment to be carried out? Is the second stage where you're going to furnish the information. Now, coming to the third stage, define target. To whom should the patches be deployed to? So once you tell that information, the last would be configure notifications, which means would you like to receive details on how well the patch deployment has been conducted? So four stages for four details which you have to give us, and just furnish the information for these four stages. We are good to automate the entire patch deployment task for you, which will keep running according to the frequency that you set. So the first is where you tell us what are the applications to be patched. Second is where you tell us how to carry out the deployment. The third is where you tell us which are the machines for which the patches need to be deployed. And the last is where you tell us how well has the patching been completed, if you would like to receive news on that. Let me not waste any more time on this. I'm going to take you to the product. So this is how the desktop central console looks. 1 minute. Yes, as you can see, this is how the Manage Engine Desktop Central Console looks. So as I was saying, we have patch management from Manage Engine in four different flavors. So Desktop Central is one product from Manage Engine, which is going to help in complete endpoint management and protection, in which patch management is one of the most important modules. So let me take Desktop Central as an example to explain how patch management module works. Now I'm clicking on patch management. So as you can see, this is how the patch management module is displayed. Right when I land on patch management, you can see different summaries, which is going to give you an up-to-date detail on how many patches are available in your system. So I have patch status summary. In your network, how many patches are missing, how many patches have been installed, how many new patches are available. Coming down, I have a quick detail on all the systems in my network. I have a health report available, how many systems are vulnerable, how many healthy systems are there in my network, and how many systems are highly vulnerable. And then coming down, I have a vulnerability database update detail. Now remember, you have a central database which you have to sync, and from there you will have the latest information. So all these technical in-depth details you can receive in the training, but now let me give you a quick walkthrough on the product. So coming down, we were talking about the automate patch deployment feature. Let me click on that. As you can see, I have an option to automate my tasks for my Windows systems, for my Mac systems, and for my Linux systems. And this is a set of automate patch deployment tasks that have already been created. Now let me click on Windows. As you can see, the four stages that we were talking about: select applications, choose deployment policy, define target, and configure notifications are readily available here. So in my select applications, all I have to do is just select the applications for which I would like to deploy the patches. If it's going to be antivirus, you can select the antivirus definition update. Coming down, I have choose deployment policy. Here you tell us when you want to deploy the patches. For example, let me click on a Chrome deploy policy, which means this comes for the deployment frequency all weeks, all days. So all the weeks, all the days, this deployment policy is created. The frequency for deployment is all weeks, all days. And my deployment window, if you see, this is the time interval using which the patches will be deployed to your production system. For example, I have from 6 o'clock to 3:59. So from 6 o'clock to 3:59 in the midnight, from 6 o'clock in the evening to 3:59 in the midnight, I can carry out the deployment of patches to my end users, to my end systems. And then you can choose when you want the deployment to be initiated at, if it is during system startup or during refresh cycle. So in the deployment policy, you choose when, during which time do you want to carry out the deployment, which time would be the best to carry out the deployment without interrupting end users. Now, the third stage, if you see, is where you're going to choose the targets to whom the patches have to be deployed to. If it's your remote location of New York, you can go ahead and choose New York. If it's your entire domain of Zoho Corp, you can go ahead and choose the entire domain. Now, once you choose your main level target, which is going to be a remote office or an entire domain, you can still filter your targets based on different categories. Let's say you have a custom group of computers comprising only of your marketing folks, then you can go with custom group. Or let's say you have just an IP range from X IP address to Y IP address. For this IP range, you would like to deploy this particular set of updates. You could go with IP range. So you can still filter your targets based on all these categories. And another interesting feature is where you can exclude a particular target from receiving the updates. Let's say I do not want my custom group of developer machines to receive the Java updates. I could go ahead and exclude the target of custom group for my comprising of my developer machines. And then coming down is configure notifications. All you have to do is give in your email address and choose if you would like to be notified of the download or deployment failure. So these are the four stages that are required for which you need to furnish details. And once you do that, it is going to be a one-time job according to the frequency that you set, this automate patch deployment task will be carried out for all the features that you have selected, for all the applications that you have selected for which patch deployment has to be carried out for. But this that does not just stop with patch management, does not just stop with automating patch management. So when we talk about patch management, there are a few real world scenarios that every system administrator finds difficulties with. So let me quickly show you what those scenarios are so that you can learn in depth if required according to your interest. So the first is test patches prior to bulk deployment to servers. Now, in the case of servers, when I'm going to deploy patches, I have a lot of what if scenarios that I need to process. What if a patch's deployment fails on the servers? What if a patch is problematic on my server? Or what if my server faces a downtime because of a patch deployment? No, we never want to face all such disarming scenarios. Hence, it is always advisable to test your patches before you roll them out to a production environment. For that, we offer the test and approve feature, which is available under settings. You will find the approval settings. Here, what is required is you will have to create a test group of computers. You can choose the patches that need to be tested, which will be tested on these groups of computers. Once that is done, you can view the details on for a particular group. For example, you can view the patch view like this. Here I have a list of all the patches that have been tested, all the patches that have been not approved. You can manually go mark them as approved and then they will be taken for deployment. So in your test and approve feature, all that is required is to create test groups, choose the patches that you need to test in these test groups. Once these patches are tested successfully, they can be marked as approved either automatically, you have an option, or if you as a system administrator would like to go and manually mark them as approved, you can do that. And once the patches that have been successfully tested are marked approved, they will be taken for deployment according to your APD task. So this is how you can make use of the automatic test and approve feature to automatically test all your patches before you take them for deployment. Another scenario comes about declining patches to certain applications. Let's take, for example, Java application, which most of my developers, if you take, for example, they do not want to patch Java since it might result in compatibility issues and other applications might stop working. So how can you decline patches to certain applications? For that, you have the decline patch option right under settings. Now, all that is required is to create a group, create a custom group, and you select all the patches which you would like to decline deploying the updates to. So in my left hand side, I will select all the patches for which I do not want to carry out patch deployment. So once you select those applications and create a group, then you have applied a decline rule for that particular group, and the applications that you have selected for which the patches will be declined to and they will never be deployed. So this is how you can make use of the decline patch option. And then we have customized deployment options with granular control. So this is what I was talking about, the deployment policy. Now the deployment policy is something very important. Now for your enterprise, if you have different patching requirements, then it is always important to create different policies. As you can see in your policy, you tell us what is your preferred week for deployment, what is your preferred day for deployment, and the time that is preferred by your network for the deployment of patches. Coming down, you also have the turn on computers before deployment option. You can choose to turn the computers on. The wake on LAN feature is applied here. Your systems are woken up and the patches are deployed to them. This is in the case of important zero-day vulnerability updates. And then you can also choose how you want to notify your end users about deployment because those guys might be busy with their work and there should be no interruption with respect to their work. And also something important, we have the reboot policy. You can configure reboot options. You have an option to exclude your servers from reboot. You also have an option to force a reboot as well as a postpone a reboot. And the same applies for shutdown as well. So, in simple, your deployment policy helps you to customize how you want to carry out the process of patching to all the systems in your network, your preferable time and day, how would you like to notify your users, and how would you like to customize reboot or shutdown operations. And last but not the least, we have a critical vulnerability report, which is going to help you stay ahead of endpoint attacks. So this has very recently been released. In the left-hand side, you will find critical vulnerabilities. So all updates that are released will be populated here. You can find all the critical vulnerabilities listed here. All you have to do is just select them and install the patch immediately from here. The beauty is all the systems that miss these critical updates will automatically be pre-filled in your install patch option. Now we were talking about the critical vulnerabilities in your Windows graphic component. Even those updates are added to your critical vulnerability report, so you can immediately go take a look at your critical vulnerability report. So with all these scenarios in mind, the features that we just discussed and the requirements to fix vulnerabilities with a proper patch management solution, ManageEngine comes in four different flavors. So Desktop Central, which is going to be a complete endpoint management and security suite. It comes with different features, not just patch management, but software deployment, configurations, reports, your remote control, all features are available with Desktop Central. If you are a managed service provider, then Desktop Central MSP is the right fit for you. Now, if you're someone who's looking at a point product just for patching, all you want is just to patch your Windows, Mac, Linux, and third-party applications, 300 plus third-party applications, then Patch Manager Plus is the point product for patching. And remember, Patch Manager Plus is available as an on-premise as well as a cloud patching solution. And then we have Patch Connect Plus. If you are an SCCM user, if you use WSUS, Patch Connect Plus is an answer for your question on third-party applications. Patch Connect Plus comes as an add-on to your SCCM environment, where using which you're going to patch all your third-party applications using the SCCM environment itself. It's just an add-on to your SCCM. So all these four flavors are available to you to help you achieve patching as an easy process. So it should not be just a once in a while security operation, but remember we have so many ransomware attacks even in the even in the tech state of Atlanta was discovered the Samsung ransomware. So remember with the spike in ransomware attacks, endpoint attacks, malware attacks, and zero-day vulnerabilities, what is important is to carry out patch management as an everyday, easy background operation for your network to be secure. So if you have any questions, you can post them in chat. We are again sorry for the audio glitch problem that we had faced during the session. We will make sure that next time during the Patch Tuesday series, we do not have any such audio related issues. Now, the good news that I would like to share with you is we have patch management for Red Hat and CentOS flavors coming up soon. By the end of April, you will have Red Hat and CentOS support for patching readily available, which you can make use of and let us know your feedback. And then Microsoft will soon release the Spring Creators update for Windows 10. So it had the end of life warning given for two versions, and now this time in April, this update version should have come, but we are experiencing a delay. So the Spring Creator update for Windows 10 will also be available soon, and we will be supporting the deployment very soon as well. So this is the good news for today's session. Thank you all for actively participating in our session. Once you close the session, you are going to receive a survey. So in this survey, you can rate us from the scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is going to be no, it is sad, and 5 is going to be happy, which means good performance. So please do not forget to rate us once the session ends. Any questions regarding the updates or the version support or regarding about patch management in general, you can post in chat. My expert panel is still there with me. And again, thank you all for your active participation. Sorry about the audio glitches. We will make sure we work on that. Thank you all, and you all have a very good day and happy patching, of course.